Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning for this conversation. It was an absolute delight to receive the phone call from Mari and the team at Art Basel to inquire as to whether I would be interested in moderating this discussion. I was endlessly curious and had 100 questions about Valentin's work, and so I felt very pleased to have the opportunity to air those questions in public. I think before we begin, it is important to say that I'm not going to describe his CV. I think that is what Google is for. You're obviously aware of who Valentin is, and you would also know about Presenhuber Galerie. And it's really wonderful, I think, because the thing I've discovered in the past couple of days is there is this beautiful relationship that exists between Markus and for Valentin now for over 10 years through representation in the gallery. And what we really want to do today, when I spoke with them, was so early in the morning, is to really excavate the relationship between them. We can, avoid description of what the gallery does, avoid description of the mechanics of things, but really to give you and to convey a sense of the intimacy, of the collaboration, of the breadth of the ways in which they engage, and the terms of reference for what is an ever-changing, sort of ever-challenging, ever-evolving process of working with an artist long-term. So, I will, however, begin by describing Valentin's practice a little bit, and I love this quote from him. I spend entire days making life-size replicas of the objects I abhor. Valentin has a rather wonderful knack for putting online quotes that convey a certain sensibility, a kind of sense of excavating the meaning of things through time, but also a kind of ability to intuit a kind of layered, nuanced meaning and a kind of antagonistic relationship to rethinking the things we know as they might be or as they might become. For Valentin, as you would be aware, sculpture is central to his work. However, he has also said, fundamentally, I've always been a painter. So there is this process of wonderful contradiction, I think, which exists in the way that he speaks to, in and around his practice, which Markus can speak to more in a moment. I would just also say that, it's been wonderful to talk with Markus and Valentin. You know that a lot of Valentin's work is drawn from the canton of Valais in Switzerland. And Markus also grew up in a canton in Switzerland. They come from different parts of Switzerland, but they share a particular sensibility for connectedness to place. No?
Alpine power.
Hashtag Alpine power if you are twittering this morning. But I think, the fact that it is no coincidence that for both of them, that choosing to work together in the context of Presenhuber, one of the most preeminent commercial galleries in Switzerland, two very sort of, located but also globally active producers, advocates, and sort of facilitators for ideas. So perhaps my first question really is to Valentin, and I'm going to ask Valentin to tell us about Presenhuber Galerie. What do you think they do? How do you think you work with them? And what is the relationship with Presenhuber like?
Bonjour. C'est beaucoup de questions. Moi, j'aimerais peut-être commencer par peut-être aussi le début de notre relation ou notre partenariat avec la galerie Eva Presenhuber.
Good morning. I will start beginning. It is our relationship, my relationship with the gallery, Presenhuber, and well, it's several years now, of course, and I'll just tell you about that.
Pour moi, c'était... j'ai commencé mon travail. Ce qui m'a permis au début de mon travail, c'est de continuer à travailler, de continuer à produire. J'ai profité un peu des bourses locales, cantonales, au début. Et ensuite, j'ai eu la chance d'obtenir 2 fois le Swiss Award, ce qui m'a permis, comme ça, il y avait aussi, à ce moment-là, mes parents qui se faisaient pas mal de soucis, parce que j'avais 22, 23 ans, et puis il fallait que je travaille, il fallait que je trouve une activité. Et Ces bourses, ces prix m'ont permis un peu pour moi de continuer ma pratique artistique.
Well, to start with, it was a question of for me to just continue production of my work. And I did get some scholarships from the different cantons. Problem was my parents were really worried about me being 22, 23, and they thought I should really get to do some proper work and earn money. And that's where we came to.
Pour faire plaisir à ma mère, à ce moment-là, j'ai même été faire un examen à laquelle pour rentrer dans une nouvelle formation de médiamaticien, et j'ai lamentablement échoué vu mon niveau d'allemand, quoi.
Well, please my mother, I went into a study of mediamatics and didn't really do too well on that.
Et après, pour faire plaisir à mon papa, j'ai fait pendant 6 mois, j'ai fait de la vente immobilière.
To please my dad, I did for about 6 months, sales of real estate, property.
J'ai quand même vendu 2 appartements, quand même.
I did sell 2 flats, 2 apartments.
I'm going to interrupt at this point. I think I asked you a difficult question by asking you to describe Presenhuber Galerie, and now you speak about your parents, which I think is very telling. Not to get all psychoanalytic about it so early on a Sunday morning.
Je pense que ça signifie déjà quelque chose, peut-être.
Well, it does mean something.
Yes, it does.
Continue.
Please, I just had to point on to this point.
C'était juste pour expliquer ma situation en tant que jeune artiste avant de rencontrer une galerie ou le monde des galeries.
It was just to explain my situation as a young artist before I actually met somebody from a gallery or several galleries.
I think there is something interesting, though, because we can do this as a discussion, which is that you are talking about the beginning of your practice and the origins of being an emerging artist and the relationship to family. And we spoke yesterday about the centrality of living in a community through time, but also how the relationship with the gallery is an extended one, that the relationships between the artists, between the way that you work with your representative gallerist, with Markus as your sort of liaison, but more than that as your kind of friend and collaborator, and also the way that the artists in the gallery become an extended part of your community. And perhaps this is interesting, that decision as a young artist when you're choosing to work with a gallery, the kind of relationships that you seek. Maybe it's good for you, Markus.
Maybe I should involve myself. I think it's, of course, at the beginning, if an artist starts with the gallery, it's about having the possibility to do work, to present work, to do shows, and I think it's the start is always about the work itself. I mean, also for the gallerist, I started at Eva Presenhuber Gallery in 2002, long time ago, and it's of course interesting how then when you start a collaboration with an artist, how that develops and how that goes on. But to start with, I think it's important always to point out it's about, we didn't know Valentin Carron personally as a person, but of course the work was very interesting and convincing, and about the work basically you start to building up a relationship, and I think that's a very interesting point, that if you feel attracted by the work of the artist, that it's not always the case. It can also be different, that a personal relationship is not really evolving, but that's very rare. I mean, I didn't have that many times, but it can happen. But with Valentin, it's a different story. I mean, over the years, we were really exploring a lot of things. Success problems, many things, and that's after 10, 12 years now, I think it gives a very special relationship, because it's on one hand it's a professional relationship, of course. It's about representing an artist in this globalized world, but it's also about having discussions, talking not only on a professional level, but also a personal level. So that's evolving over the years, and I think we know each other now since many years, and went through many things, and we're still here, and we're still very good. I think it's.
I think there is a really beautiful quote from Valentin as well. I keep on quoting him this morning because he speaks so well. And he says, when you say his work is still so good, he says that he spares no effort to make his art not too bad and not too good. And this is what you said. But I did wonder, because there is this nature in the work which is duplicitous, this kind of migration of appropriation and the inappropriateness or appropriateness of appropriation.
Oh, of course, I know exactly what you mean, or what Valentin means, and we speak also often about that. It's not, sometimes you have a work by an artist that is very flashy, very attractive, very, from the first point of view. Valentin's work is somehow deeper in the sense that it's rough. It's sometimes soft. It's sometimes soft. Yes. It has a lot of contradictions in it, and I think that makes it very interesting. And that's what you say often, actually, that you. For instance, with your paintings, that you like to do them, and in the end they should be somehow perfect in the sense you decided, but also you should see that they were made very quickly because of the technique you're using. You never use canvas. What is it? I should know. Tarp.
Tarp, yes. Tarpaulin, yes.
So it's a process that has to go very, very quickly, and I think that's very important to you, that you have this kind of contradictory definitions to do your work, and that at the end you have a certain aesthetic, and that's what we always can see when Valentin is doing shows. And I think also that you have the capability through your work basically to always do very convincing installations and working with the space.
I think there's probably a question, though, to be asked about the fact. I will interrupt you. I will do this to keep you moving. It's the Australian in me. The difference. It was interesting we are travelling through time this morning from different points in the earth, but. I think there is a point about that sort of nuance of the origins and the relationship that you have to excavating, particularly the symbology of the Swiss landscape, of the history of the place, of the issues that exist around the touristic representation of Swiss culture, which is underlined by a more kind of nuanced, shifting geopolitical space that relates to a kind of difficulty of nuanced identity. And that, I suppose, really, how important is the relationship with your Swiss gallery and your Swiss gallerist, bearing in mind that your work migrates so heavily away from this context, but is so deeply, in many ways, embedded within it?
Tu veux dire quelque chose, Valentin?
Oui, moi quand on m'a invité à travailler avec la galerie, faut dire que il y avait déjà à l'intérieur, il y avait déjà des artistes qui m'intéressaient beaucoup, comme Jean-Frédéric Schneider, Peter Fischli, David Weiss, D'autre part, peut-être même Ugo Rondinone ou d'autres encore. Je trouvais que, moi, je pense qu'après, c'est des questions de... Si je peux répondre à votre question, pour moi, c'est des questions d'équilibre aussi. Une galerie suisse doit avoir des représentants de son pays, quoi. C'est une question d'équilibre. C'est une question de... Moi, je compare souvent un peu bon, c'est peut-être pas c'est le moment de l'Eurofoot, mais je compare souvent voilà, je pense qu'une galerie doit avoir... Moi, j'aime bien avoir Pour moi, c'était magique, comme ça, de rentrer et d'exposer dans les mêmes lieux que Fichte-Weiss, par exemple. Pour moi, c'était vraiment un grand honneur. Et puis, bon, bah, je me sens aussi de cet héritage-là, quoi. Donc... bon, avec aussi un héritage peut-être plus roman, avec des gens comme Olivier Mosset ou John Armleder. Mais pour moi, c'est comme une équipe de foot, quoi. C'est-à-dire qu'il faut, voilà, il faut des vieux expérimentés, il faut des jeunes fous, il faut des... Moi, je voyais une galerie aussi de cette manière-là, quoi. Et voilà, pour moi, c'était vraiment une proposition que je ne pouvais pas refuser. Voilà, parce que c'était non seulement la galerie avait pour moi une très bonne réputation, bien sûr, mais il y avait aussi ces acteurs qui étaient pour moi déjà des gens très importants quand j'étais étudiant.
Whole thing started also because I was interested in what they were exhibiting at this gallery. I thought it was very interesting, and I thought that it was a gallery which was doing really very well, had very attractive exhibits, but I thought it might be a good thing for a gallery in Switzerland to have Swiss artists presented there as well. And it's also a question of finding a balance between what is presented there, curating of objects, and also to have young people, older artists with more experience and so on as well, just to find a balance between all of that.
And that's, of course, what Valentin was describing from his point of view. That's also very important for the gallery. We were speaking about that yesterday, to have this balance in a way in the program. And I remember very well the first show you did at the gallery, and that's always exciting. And then it's interesting also to learn about all the different reactions you can have, and of course there is the artistic system that reacts somehow, but very important, and always very curious to know about is also the reaction of the artists of the gallery program. What do they say about an exhibition of a new artist? And so that's in a way really the crucial point to build the program, to have the program. And I think Eva Presenhuber is really known for that she's doing that in a very convincing way. And so that gives then, of course, a different relationship between the galleries, but also among the artists. It's not just that you are one artist we are representing. No, it's more like a small system, the gallery itself, in a way, how the gallery works. And that's my voice is really okay. I guess it's
Sunday
better.
at Art Basel. I think there is a really interesting point. Markus has a master's degree from a university in Basel and went to work directly for Eva Presenhuber in 2002, just before she parted ways with Hauser and Wirth to create the independent space that she has in 2003, the first gallery, and the second gallery in 2012. Markus has been with the gallery since it transitioned from having a very small team of people of 6 to now 18 staff, but still Valentin is the artist that you work with exclusively. And I think in the past 15 years, we've seen a radical shift. I mean, particularly Basel over 46 years now has really been a kind of cipher for rethinking the relationship of the gallery system to artists and the expectation through collaboration, through advocacy, through development of new work, through sharing ideas. It's really the way that the gallerist is a kind of interstitial advocate with a whole constellation of relationships. And we spoke yesterday about how the art world 10, 15 years ago, maybe we thought the internet would devolve the necessity for us to meet in person. But if anything, communications has amplified the necessity for relationships to be more meaningful, to be more interpersonal, to be deeper. And it would be interesting to know, over this, since 2005 when Valentin joined the gallery, that first show, it's beautiful that you mentioned that because that was a question. How do you think the relationship with him has altered your understanding? Or how has your relationship together, it's a question for both of you, altered the way that you think through what a relationship is between an artist and a gallery, and how has the relationship changed over 10 years?
Do I answer first and then the translation, or do you want to answer first? Okay.
C'est difficile à expliquer parce que c'est quand même une histoire longue d'une dizaine d'années. Moi, je pense que les premières années, j'étais extrêmement... j'avais quand même un rapport un peu naïf aussi à la galerie. Mais j'ai senti vraiment aussi beaucoup de motivation de la part de la galerie. Et ce qui... elle soutient pas, c'est pas uniquement un soutien financier, c'est aussi un soutien parfois logistique, parfois, mais aussi d'encouragement. Je pense il peut y avoir des similitudes avec peut-être le monde de la musique. Si je pense aux producteurs ou aux managers de musique, j'en sais, je connais pas vraiment ce milieu, mais moi, pour moi, le plus important, c'était la liberté aussi, la liberté de produire ce que je voulais. En tout cas, je me rappelle pour ce premier show, ces premières expositions, j'ai eu aucune restriction. Voilà, aucune direction, aucune restriction. C'était vraiment, et cette confiance-là, je l'ai sentie tout de suite, en tout cas chez Presenhuber.
That's a fairly long relationship that we have had. It's about 10 years started. And what has really always made me happy, if you like, is the fact that I've had support, financial support, of course, and encouragement, and no sort of imposition of what I was supposed to do. I had the freedom to produce my art, and that has always been very, very good.
That's maybe I also say something to this in the sense that yes, it is a freedom which the gallery gives, but it's also the expectation basically that the artist knows what he's doing. I mean, it wouldn't be a great thing if we would have to interfere here. I mean, that's why I always come back to the work of an artist. I mean, to the way of his practice, and the best thing that can happen to a gallery is when an artist knows exactly what he wants to do, knows exactly how he wants to install his shows, and what he expects basically from his work, where it should go to. And I think that's a very good situation, and that makes the gallery confident that the artist is really good and will succeed. So it's not only it's a lot of expectation to the artist as well, but it's this kind of, it's also kind of a balance. I mean that the support and the expectation are on an equal level in a way, and I think that's what's happening here since many years now, and that's great.
I mean, I think, pardon me, we discussed yesterday that, and we returned to the work of the artist himself, which is, the very strong language of appropriation and reappropriation, the risk that is inherent in the ascribing of meaning to things that is singular, and the proliferation of meaning that exists within something that is both represented as the real, but also the unreal, and what is an authentic space of representation is something that sits within your work. There is also within this a kind of implicit condition of testing the thresholds of failure of something, the failure of meaning, the failure of time, the accumulation of history and meaning in objects, and the way that you assemble them. You did a beautiful installation in 2009 for Eva Presenhuber, a period room that you created in the gallery, like a European museum. And I think, I would love to know a bit more for the audience about the process of working together towards an exhibition. You said to me yesterday you don't do email, which I love because I hate email, and that you call each other on the phone. And, Markus mentioned to me that he comes to visit you sometimes in the canton, and you mentioned to me that you talk about wine and you talk about cars. So it would be nice for the audience to know a little bit about the dynamic of the relationship that leads to these spaces.
Je dois quand même avouer que c'est moi qui vais le plus souvent à Zurich.
It's
I hope go to Zurich more often.
It's absolutely true.
Did you lie to me?
No, I said I would like to visit Valentin more often, but it's basically yes, I'm trapped now. But he comes much more often to Zurich, to the gallery, but which is also great. Then you can see all the. That's also important. Then he can see the other shows we are doing, the other artists, and we can have coffee in the kitchen and. Next time.
Mais moi, un de mes plaisirs, à part de fabriquer des objets d'art ou d'installer de l'art, c'est de prévisualiser mentalement ce que va pouvoir être cette exposition. Donc, j'essaye toujours de préparer un peu des représentations, des croquis, des explications, et je viens avec tout un dossier que j'amène à Zurich.
Dossier.
Et que je présente sur un bureau. Et non, mais ça, voilà, mais oui, il y a des discussions préalables. Après, au niveau si la galerie peut me donner une aide pour produire une pièce, ou financièrement, ou techniquement, ou autre. Et voilà, mais c'est vrai c'est pas totalement une surprise pour la galerie ce que je vais faire. On a quand même une discussion et voilà, moi avec Eva et Markus, j'ai jamais vraiment eu de. Peut-être qu'ils m'ont dirigé sournoisement et j'ai pas remarqué. Mais j'ai l'impression de toujours avoir travaillé avec vraiment beaucoup de liberté. Et c'est après ma propre. Je parlais avant des autres artistes, et c'est peut-être aussi, peut-être on aurait pu parler de ça aussi, mais c'est de la conversation sous-jacente, enfin une conversation qui ne se dit pas, qui ne se prononce pas, mais qui est une conversation avec. Évidemment, je montre une expo dans un espace où d'autres artistes ont montré une expo, donc forcément, pour moi, il y a quand même une réponse ou j'essaye d'ajouter quelque chose ou de retirer quelque chose. Mais je pense qu'il y a une conversation aussi entre les artistes de la galerie et qui se fait à travers des œuvres d'art. Ça, je trouve intéressant de pouvoir travailler dans une galerie avec qui j'ai des artistes avec qui j'ai des affinités, quoi. En tout cas esthétiques ou artistiques.
Well, I particularly like going to Zurich myself because I can go to this gallery and visualize what my works look like in that particular space. And I go along with sketches of the different things that I'm planning to do and put them on the table, and then we talk. We have a whole file of things to discuss like that. And I also find it very interesting to think that there is this affinity with other artists that are exhibiting there. And also, the thing that I have the feeling that I'm free. I don't know whether I'm being manipulated in a very, very subtle way to do. But
I don't think so, honestly.
but exactly, I don't think so.
It's your return of reply.
To what question?
To the question of the process. The original question was the process of working with Valentin towards the development of exhibitions with the gallery and
of an exhibition, yeah.
Yeah, and the commissioning of work.
Yeah, it's in a way. I mean, as we said, we start the discussion early on, whether it's a show that we have at the gallery, whether it's a show that he has in an institutional space, or even at another gallery. Valentin works in the meantime. I mean, that's a development also, that he started 2004 in Zurich with us, but he works with the gallery in New York, he works with the gallery in Paris and in LA. And all these activities and the network that grew over time, I mean, that's basically something we often, we discuss these kind of projects that are going on. And it's a very open discussion, but it's more like exchanging or presenting idea. It's more that Valentin, if he's in Zurich, speaks about his ideas, and he gets a reaction, a first reaction somehow.
Et d'abord, j'en parle à ma mère. Alors.
I first talk to my mother.
And this I don't know. And that's but it's not this kind of idea that something strategically has to be decided or planned. It's more like a fluid development over the last years, and the longer you know each other, the better you understand each other. I mean, it might be funny for you that I just said, I mean, when we speak, I speak. This is true. I speak French. You don't speak English to me. German, that's no option. But I do speak French with Valentin. Sometimes we mix. I mean, it's a language barrier in a way, but it keeps me basically practicing my French, which is not the best, and that's why I decided to talk to here in this situation in English and not in French, so we are able to communicate directly. We don't have always a translator.
I mean, I think that translation operates as, a very sort of prescient kind of allegory in some ways for the relationship of the gallery to the artist. And, as you mentioned, Valentin has galleries in New York, in Paris, elsewhere. But, we're working within the Swiss context in a very particularly nuanced way, and that Valentin's work really kind of tests that moment of threshold that exists within the contested space of what Switzerland perceives its national identity to be, the very heavily contested and the heavy investment in cultural identity and national identity that is held by the Swiss government to the Valais that you come from, but how your work tests and undermines or rethinks or resituates. And you're working, for the relationship with your Swiss gallery. Are there things that are not possible to do in the space, or things that you do here, particularly because this is the space, and where you can actually, through time, through multiple exhibitions, excavate ideas in a different way? That's a good question, yeah.
Si quand je monte mon travail ailleurs qu'en Suisse, je dois être un représentant de l'identité suisse. C'est vrai que
When I work elsewhere, I have to see that I am actually a representative of the Swiss identity.
Parce que pour moi, la Suisse en elle-même n'est pas vraiment un sujet. Pour moi, c'est là où je vis, si vous voulez, c'est plutôt une zone que je considérais périurbaine. C'est un peu, pour moi, un peu l'Europe des campagnes et de l'ennui et des petites villes et des petits villages. Mais ça, c'est un sujet qui, pour moi, peut être global.
The fact is that where I live in Switzerland, it's really countryside, south of Switzerland, and it's really just the landscape, nothing special, if you like, about the identity of Switzerland. It's a landscape, or a countryside which could be elsewhere in Europe.
Pour moi, c'est encore une fois, c'est une situation que je pourrais reproduire ou revoir si je vivais en Alsace, dans le Piémont ou en Andalousie, je pense.
It's a situation that I could see and try to reproduce if I lived in the Alsace or in the Piedmont, in Italy or elsewhere.
New Jersey.
In New Jersey.
Encore une fois, je me sens pas le devoir. Et je crois que mon travail aussi a évolué dans ce sens-là, où c'est vrai que peut-être ça. Moi, j'ai toujours vu un exotisme de l'intérieur. J'ai toujours dit que je faisais du safari avec ma voiture, c'est-à-dire que je prends des photos depuis ma voiture sans sortir de la voiture, de situations architecturales, locales, de choses un peu qui semblent un peu décalées, qui peuvent m'intéresser.
The thing is that when I travel around with my car, I take photographs, give me an impression of the countryside, and just to try to reproduce that.
Je veux dire par là que je pense que je peux travailler de cette manière-là un peu partout dans le monde. Mais depuis un certain temps, je crois que je suis un peu en train de... Je comprends bien que mes modèles locaux ne fonctionnent pas la même chose en Californie, encore différemment à New York et différemment à Paris. Et finalement différemment aussi à Zurich. Moi, je crois que j'essaye de trouver quelque chose d'exotique ou d'étrange ou même des choses qui peuvent un peu, des situations qui peuvent un peu m'effrayer mais j'essaye de toute façon, quand on fait de l'art, on fait pénétrer ce type d'impression dans des langages les langages de la civilisée, quoi, que sont les installations, la sculpture et le film, etc. Et je pense que voilà. Mais c'est clair que si tout d'un coup je fais une petite histoire sur un événement historique typiquement valaisan, ça intéressera moins les Américains que si un artiste américain travaille sur John Dillinger, c'est tout de suite passionnant parce que c'est des histoires qui sont tout de suite internationales. Après, ça dépend aussi de la puissance médiatique de là où on vit, quoi.
The thing is that what I try to do is to find an exotic element in what I see, even it happens to be in Switzerland. If I were to do this in New York or elsewhere, there would be a more international aspect to it. And, it's just trying to transpose these impressions and feelings into the work.
Perhaps Markus, do you have a thought on
Yeah, I have many thoughts.
on what Valentin just said?
Yeah, I think it's what he said. I see that also. It's a very specific way he works, but on the other hand, it doesn't really matter whether that's in the Valais. I mean, it's important for you to live there. But as you said, it could be elsewhere. I think it's just a decision to say that or to live that life that you think it's that's what you want to do. Basically, not going into a hub or a center because that's not really necessary for you. You find for your work what you have to find, and it's again at the end you can see it in the work, but of course it's very interesting if you know the region where Valentin is living, and if you drive there through, you have many moments of understanding, but it's absolutely not necessary. You can have many understandings of the work, and I think that's also the crucial point why the work is what it is.
I mean, we spoke yesterday about, the unspoken implication that artists must move to Berlin or to New York to be central to LA, that there is still this pull towards this notion of a center. And, when your work is successful and is getting high visibility and lots of exhibitions and lots of opportunity, the pragmatics of being able to live somewhere which is not necessarily a center per se, for lack of a better way of terming this, is okay. It can be an asset. But at times where, you're getting opportunities are less frequent, where there is perhaps more challenge around the work, or you have a time where the work is presenting obstacles or obstructions, or you find the process is difficult, to perhaps sometimes not be located amongst larger communities of artists or collaborators can be more challenging. And that tension that exists between making a decision to stay local but to be working in a much more expanded way. I mean, can we talk a little bit to this?
Yeah, I think that's of course that's this kind of two possibilities an artist has. It's different if Valentin lives. It's still 3 hours from Zurich, but of course we have through that vicinity kind of a more direct relationship, because we can see each other if necessary. We can phone without time difference, and so that has a lot of advantages for the relationship. But again, these days that's not really. You can work with many artists all over the world, but the decision that Valentin did, and I think that's also very impressive to see, and it's with his situation now, with the setting of with whom he works. I think it's completely doable, and it's his character, and that's you can change many things, but certain things you can't, and you shouldn't.
Do you want to add anything, Valentin?
Mais moi, le décalage horaire avec la Californie, ça m'arrange bien parce que je me lève toujours vers midi. Donc,
The question of California is always a bit of a problem with the relationship, because I arrive at noon, at midday.
I mean, I think...
Ils ont aussi prévu, parce qu'ils sont très gentils, j'ai un artiste liaison que je salue d'ailleurs, Raphaël Lepine, chez Kandinsky Galerie, qui parle parfaitement français aussi, pour rassurer un peu le monde, et la même chose à New York. Donc,
I have the privilege of working with a gallery in California and in New York where the people do speak French.
Well, this is very good. I don't speak French, so that is a step up. But I think, perhaps, I think this idea, though, still to excavate, and that you have artists from Switzerland who live in New York and artists who live elsewhere, but that you live here, and I don't want to labor this too much, but there is also something interesting in the relationship that exists with the gallery, and that your wife is also represented by the gallery. Latifa. And just to talk a little bit about having two artists represented by the same gallery and this process of living and working in this context.
on n'en parle pas du tout.
You don't talk about that.
Okay.
Et puis on essaye d'avoir différents directeurs qui... Voilà, elle a sa propre personne avec qui elle a un lien, par exemple avec Kamel Menour, elle a une différente personne. Donc Latifa a une différente personne chez Eva. Et voilà quoi. On essaye de pas trop interférer dans les affaires des autres parce que sinon c'est pas possible. Voilà, mais bien sûr, on a aussi nous. Finalement, on a aussi notre petit team. À la maison, maintenant, je travaille avec quelqu'un qui fait un peu de secrétariat et de comptabilité, et puis un assistant. Donc, aussi, voilà, ça aussi, c'est peut-être quelque chose qui a changé depuis le début. C'est que je pense que je me suis senti, ou on s'est senti avec Latifa, l'obligation aussi de s'autonomiser un petit peu et d'être un petit peu moins dépendant des galeries avec lesquelles on travaille. Et c'est peut-être au début, c'est bien d'avoir une relation assez fusionnelle avec les galeries où vraiment ils s'occupent de beaucoup de choses. Il y a une aide à la production, il y a une aide même peut-être financière, une aide. Et ça, je trouve ça important parce que, comme je racontais avant, moi après avoir vendu ces 2 appartements, j'avais plus du tout de sous, plus rien, et de se sentir soutenu. Sorry.
I hope you all speak French.
The thing is, of course, it's important to have this very good relationship with the gallery. You try. Sometimes it's a gallery that represents, say, 2 artists or more, and you try not to interfere with the work of the other artists who are around.
That seems like a very succinct summary of what Valentin just said. Maybe, Markus, do you have some...
Yeah, that's what Valentin said. I mean, that's really important, and actually for the relation to the gallery, it's at the end, it's great, and it's all about a question basically of timing. If a young artist is represented by a gallery, the gallery does many more things than at the age of 40 ans maintenant, no? If someone has a certain career already done, then it turns out, and we had that in the gallery with many other artists as well, that they build their own studio. They are more independent in the sense with collaborating with other galleries, and it would be the most stupid thing you could do as a gallery to worry about that, because I mean that's why the relation over the 10 years is important. Either the relation is here or not. So at the end, it gives us time both to speak about other things than about just logistics and administrative problems. So that's a great development in a way that happened in the last 2 years, I think, more or less, and so it's a it's a situation you could also call growing up, being more independent on a certain level, which has nothing to do with the relationship at the end. And I think that's what the gallery is supporting and again expecting in a way too.
I think this is it. We spoke yesterday about how, because this conversation today is about the relationship between artists and their galleries and that personal relationship, and that there is the business of business, but then there is something more, and that is that interpersonal and the conversations and to point out that Valentin and that his wife is also represented by you is to say that these conversations are both broader in terms of supporting the livelihood of an artist, but also personal because these relationships exist, that are these other conversations within this community that are both interconnected but also independent. And that's something. And I think also that interpersonal space, that we're talking about today between you and between that relationship with the gallery is about a space in your work of risk as well, that requires an ability to be vulnerable to difficult ideas and to presenting difficult ideas with a level of ambition. And in your work, I do want to move into just talking before we finish up today about there is a provocation that often exists in your work. When you think of the work like Fosberg's Fop outside the crucifix, outside Art Basel in 2009, or the positioning of a giant snake at the entrance of the Swiss pavilion when you represented Switzerland for the Venice Biennale. How do you work within this space between you with this risk of supporting ambition and, a level of risk, but also maintain a space of vulnerability and experimentation in the practice? And what happens in this relationship around that?
Oui, alors pour ce crucifix, là, le crucifix sur la... Yeah. Provocation. Non, je pense que ça fait partie du cahier des charges de l'artiste.
That's part of the specifications given to the artist, what he's supposed to do.
La question, oui. Pardon. Non, là, c'était un projet je crois que c'était un projet que la Galerie m'a proposé. À l'époque, c'était le... Art.
And there is an entire series of works with the cross, so that was introduced actually before. I think it was in the first time in Milano, no? At Via Farini, an exhibition space where you were showing crosses, but maybe you speak about the idea of the crosses, that it's more that you see it more in the sense of a minimalistic shape than with the loaded meaning of whatever it can mean.
It's that threshold that we spoke about today, that kind of slip of the kind of appropriateness of appropriation, and at what point do you intuit something as symbolic and at what point do you intuit something as objective? Yeah.
Non, pour moi c'était aussi un prototype que j'ai fabriqué pour le Vatican, pour une nouvelle période de prosélytisme.
It was also a project that I did for the Vatican for a new period proselytizing.
Et ils n'en ont pas voulu.
But they didn't want me.
The piece made it to Carrara at least.
Sur la place Gramsci. Et j'ai eu très peu de succès avec les vieilles personnes un peu communistes du coin.
Well, I wasn't very successful with the older people who were communists.
Avec ma croix.
That's my cross. Wasn't very successful with them. One of the crosses.
Oui, et puis par exemple la relation aussi avec, oui, pour peut-être la Biennale de Venise aussi. Pour moi, là, c'est vrai que la galerie m'a servi un peu d'organisateur, aussi peut-être elle me servait aussi de filtre par rapport à l'association, enfin par rapport à Pro Helvetia, par rapport à, donc je pouvais disons que voilà, encore une fois ils m'ont laissé cette liberté de produire. Moi, ce qui m'intéresse dans le fond, c'est quel type d'objets je vais produire et comment je vais les installer dans un nouvel espace.
The gallery was also helping me as a kind of organizer, and also to see how I could make the things that I was interested in, how they could be presented.
Mais la galerie, là, c'est vrai qu'il y a tout un rôle. Là, la galerie a eu un rôle presque diplomatique aussi.
The gallery also had an almost diplomatic role to play.
Yeah, that's the classical position of a gallery, to intermediate with all different kind of involved people, starting with the artist, the curators, the collectors. What else? Yeah, I mean that's the gallery job, and that's also why it's important to have this, or important, it's in a way given if you are working in the contemporary art scene with living artists. That's the big advantage, that you have always the direct source that you can interpretate and work with on many different levels with many other involved persons. So that's of course, but that's very general, maybe too general.
I think in 2014 you had an exhibition with Presenhuber where you showed a work which was an appropriation of a work from Neuchâtel. And this work in English is called The Dawn. And the son of the artist, you described the work, which is at the entrance of Neuchâtel, as a work you wanted to reproduce the work in order to explore the emotion that this work provoked for you. You described the work as an appropriation. The son of the artist did not share the same opinion and described this act as a copy so exact that it becomes a forgery. But Christian Bernard described this as, that your work denounces itself as an imitation and it presents itself very openly as a replica, and spoke about how Sturtevant says that, appropriation is a process that has been legitimized by history. So this is a work that was situated at Presenhuber, which appropriated a familiar sculpture from a local situation and entered into this other discourse. How do you work together through this process?
Appropriation, c'est aussi dans le cahier des charges.
Well, appropriation is also part of the specifications for the artist.
Sinon cette histoire.
We worked it through and we resolved it, and no, I mean it was that's kind of we had certain discussions, and of course I understand the disappointment that you have to deal with questions like that, and I completely understand. I mean, from an our theoretical point of view, the discussion is actually obsolete. But there is the other issue from a legal point of view. So we had, unfortunately, to spend some hours with the lawyer, but that was So we resolved that.
Yeah. Is there, I think I'm getting told from behind the curtain that there might be time for one or two questions. Is there a question?
Hello, I have a question for Markus. I understand that with the mature artists, selection is relatively easy regarding your commercial interests. However, when you make a selection of the emerging artist, young artist, can you specify and systemize what are the milestones that you take into the consideration when placing a bet and your investment for the artist. You may lose a lot of money. If you make a wrong decision, you can fail your clients, your financial well-being, and probably that point is the most crucial. If you can be specific, maybe with 2-3 points, or maybe 5.
2, 3, or 5.
Maybe 1. No, I mean the how to put it, the investment. It's first of all, I have to say, I mean the gallery at this point, and the program is entirely done by Eva herself. So the gallery at this point has a certain setting, and it's more. I don't think that it's about decisions of investing or not investing. It's more about who of a younger generation can be a great artist and who will fit into the program. So, and then it's also about trying out, and guarantees you never have. I mean, that's for sure, because the last, let's say, 10 years, maybe the last 7 years, there was a situation where young artists could evolve very, very quickly, but that doesn't mean that they will succeed. So I mean, Valentin has that experience too. I mean, an artist's career is lasting 40, 50 years, and the relation of the gallery to an artist, if the gallery decides to work with an artist, then that's a very crucial decision. There is a big responsibility on both sides, and it's a long-term engagement. So that's what I'm saying to your question.
I think yesterday too you made an interesting point to me that it's not as much of a risk to take on an emerging artist as it is to sustain and be resilient through the duration of a relationship with an artist, and that the mid-career of an artist is a particularly challenging time, and in many ways the advocacy for an emerging artist carries a particular capital, but that it's really those other years, it's the years upon years where this relationship is tested, and that advocacy to collectors, to curators, to institutions, to the market, that ability to sustain a level of engagement with an artist's practice through time is actually what demarcates a kind of exemplary example of a relationship between an artist and a gallery.
Yeah, and this needs, of course, from both sides always new input, new efforts. You can't stand still, but that's why I always say it's very important that the artist, I mean, the ideas have to come from the artist, and that's why they're artists, and that's why we are the gallerist. We don't have the ideas. We have the ideas maybe how to represent the work, but yeah, being an artist is one of the most difficult things, I think.
And I think that is the point really in the discussion that we've been having with the way that, you know, for you to spend 15 years with Presenhuber, to be so dedicated to one organization through time, is because, you know, I think it's interesting. We spoke about the strengths of the gallery in the market, but that really, you know, it's these relationships through time. And it's the way that the gallery is very led by the artist rather than led by the market.
Yeah, in a way, I mean, it was also my decision to do that. And when I started, it was not that I just wanted to work in a gallery. I wanted to work at Eva Presenhuber Gallery, and over the years, the development was very interesting and and challenging for me too, and it still is. So that's a rare but great situation. Yeah.
Is there any more questions from the audience? Yes.
I wanted to ask if you think too close a relationship between gallerist and artist can have a detrimental effect on the work of the gallery. Too close a friendship.
The question is to me or to Valentin? Okay. Well, too close. Yeah, it's not about. I think it's the relationship between gallerist and artist is a very special relationship. It's not that we are hanging out every evening and sharing everything, but of course it's kind of a professional relationship we have, but that goes quite far beyond just the everyday questions or problems to resolve or ideas. And that's why I mentioned also that it's great that if the artist is developing, that he has his own studio that actually helps a lot to build or to have this relationship which can be friendship, but I don't think that it's a danger. That would be strange, in my opinion.
Et moi, je pense qu'au départ, c'est souvent ambigu en fait cette relation. C'est une relation. En tout cas, moi, au début, je l'ai vue, je crois, comme une relation plus de confiance, d'amitié. C'est vrai qu'il y a un danger. Moi, je l'ai vécu surtout avec des galeries avec qui je suis parti. Il y a peut-être des rapports des fois trop amicaux ou trop intimes, mais je ne sais pas si c'est un danger. Mais c'est vrai que de quitter, par exemple, une galerie j'ai quitté une galerie avec qui je travaillais depuis 4 ou 5 ans. C'est vraiment pas facile. C'est un peu comme une rupture. Il y a quelque chose pour moi, en tout cas, peut-être que j'étais plus jeune et que je le sentais de manière plus. J'étais peut-être plus fragile, mais je me souviens avoir fait un coup de fil où c'était très dur de l'annoncer, quoi. Parce que c'est pas seulement des relations commerciales, il y a aussi parce que pour moi et le travail, je finis avec ça. Le travail d'un artiste, c'est forcément c'est quand même dévoiler un peu une part de son intimité pour que cette part d'intimité soit comprise. Par le galeriste, on a besoin de certains échanges en discussion, et puis c'est vrai que tout d'un coup il peut y avoir une dissension, une rupture, et voilà, c'est une amitié qui part, quoi.
The thing with relationships with a gallery, it can be really friendship, it can be much more really a close relationship, but it can at some point maybe deteriorate. Then if you have to break it off, then that becomes really very difficult. I've had this experience myself.
Un peu comme voilà. Je disais un peu comme une rupture amoureuse peut-être parfois.
So almost breaking up with your lover.
Is there any more questions? I think we have time for one more. Yes.
Maybe it's too specific, but what aspect you found within Valentin that you wanted to support his artistic career when you first met him?
So
Sorry, I didn't get it now.
What is it that prompted you to, what was it about Valentin that prompted you to want to work with him, the particular quality?
Again, I mean, when I was working, I mean, I knew his work. The decision, Eva met you, I don't know, 2 years before or 3 years before. She for sure knew your work. Me too, but at the time when Valentin basically came into the gallery, I started at the gallery as an artist liaison with Ugo Rondinone, so I was very busy with Ugo Rondinone.
But I have to say, Valentin told me yesterday, before he committed to the gallery, he danced with Eva, both literally and figuratively.
It was
another secret?
It was out. C'était. Oui, j'ai dansé avec elle.
I am nice with her.
À Londres, dans une cave.
It was during Freeze, I think, when we had the solo booth with Dieter Roth. You remember? Dieter Roth, solo booth. You remember? Yeah.
I mean, I think that was a lovely story yesterday to know that when I asked Valentin, he said, yes, Eva and I danced before we began to work together, which I think is, not what people expect from the beginning of this relationship.
Elle dansait avec trop d'énergie et au bout d'un moment, j'ai dû m'enfuir.
Well, there was a lot of energy involved, and I had to use that energy somehow.
And may I ask one last question before we finish? I would just love to know from both of you what is coming up next. What are you working on together?
Ça, c'est une question intéressante.
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, there are 2-3 things coming up which can be very interesting. It's not really, we cannot really speak about it. We have to do it. It's a bit of work still to do, but it will be, I think, there will be great new steps and yeah, you will see what's coming out.
This is diplomacy in action, Markus.
Yes, Galerie has to be diplomatic, and I'm also Libra, so in the...
We'll finish with the Gallerist doing his job, unless Valentin has something to add.
Moi, je pensais que, Markus, tu allais profiter de cette conversation pour me proposer quelque chose.
I thought you were going to take advantage of this conversation to propose something to me.
A show in Australia,
Of
yes.
course you can come to Australia, but this morning he told me that Australia is in the 90s. Anyway, so we can travel you through time for sure. Look, please join me in, as Valentin said in his quote, I try not to be too bad or too good, but this morning my speakers have been excellent, and please give them a round of applause for being so honest and willing to share.